I hereby convene our 2021 annual meeting here at St. Stephen's. Welcome to all of you. Again, those of you who are here today, who braved the monsoon to be here this morning. For those of you watching from home, and from those who are working with our children or doing other things here at the moment, who are going to be watching this later on this morning. Let me take a point. Since last year, this was an entirely virtual event for my first annual meeting with you. It was purely like a telethon for a televangelist. At least that's how I felt last year. We were not raising money, of course, but we were trying to tell you through a virtual means of all of the things that were happening in spite of COVID here at St. Stephen's last year. One of the benefits of that is that it has allowed us this year, obviously, to be back in person to some extent. Also to know that a good number of our people are watching this from home for a variety of understandable reasons. But this will be the pattern of our annual meetings, and indeed of how church goes for this time forth. We are officially in the digital age, if you haven't picked up on that yet. And as such, blending together this type of in-person fellowship and worship with continuing our worship and community building online is a key part of what we have done and what we are continuing to do. There are some of you in here who are fairly new Episcopalians. Some of you might be your first time ever walking into an Episcopal church today, and some of you watch it online. Maybe like, is this what you do every Sunday? You have a business meeting every Sunday? No, I can assure you, this is a once-a-year thing. But we do this, one, because we are required to by the canons of our church, but it is also that time of the year in which we gather together to talk about not simply the nuts and bolts of business, although that's important. We are here to listen about finances of the church, the business of the church, because those are things that help keep the church going. But we're also here to gather to celebrate what we have accomplished over the last year and to challenge ourselves for what is to come over the next year. And this is always the perfect forum and setting for that. In years past, St. Stephen's has done its annual meeting following the service. I like doing it as part of the service because it is part of what we do. It is part of our giving ourselves to God. It is obviously not done with a song and a dance, so to speak, but it is part of saying that the business of the church is also part of our worship and praise to God. Plus, while I'm not worried about any of you here today, I did learn the hard way at another parish that putting the annual meeting in the middle of a service does make it less likely that somebody's going to get up and say, well, Norman, I can't believe you would do something like that. Oh, you're going to give me communion here in just a few minutes. So putting it within the context of worship kind of checks us on saying, share your thoughts and opinions, because there will be opportunities for you to ask questions and to share comments in this meeting, but it reminds you to also be deliberate in how you make those comments. We will have that section coming up later in the meeting. I want to say for those of you who are watching the live stream, you also have an opportunity to ask questions. And in fact, you'll get a chance to do that all through this meeting if you wish. You have two ways of doing that. One is you can type in something on the chat stream as you watch this service right now. Keep in mind, it needs to be while we're doing the annual meeting. I will not get the questions while I'm up holding bread at the altar, so it needs to be during the meeting. Or you can call in. We have people manning the phones. Call right now to our hotline, whatever, something. Our number is 865-483-8497. And I just thought and realized we have two wonderful people downstairs, Elizabeth Pack and my mother, who are answering the phones and watching the live stream. And I realized we have a very trained web guru watching the live stream and a retired judge with caller ID manning the phone lines. We inadvertently made this very intimidating for you to ask questions if that's the case. Elizabeth's delightful. My mother is delightful. As long as you're not breaking the law, you will enjoy speaking with them. But please, in all seriousness, call in if you have any questions that come up. They will relay the messages to Simon, wherever Simon went, somewhere, and he will pass those messages on to me. So everyone here in person and watching has an opportunity to ask questions. So, order of business, again, if you do not have here in person, that is, one of these packets, please raise your hand if you do not have one of these packets. Looks like everybody has one. If you do not have one, and you realize you don't have one, raise your hand and one of the ushers will be happy to bring those to you. So the first item of business, your agenda that I will be working off of is found on page 4 in your packet. But the first order of business is to approve the minutes from last year, just like we do at a vestry meeting. Part of our requirement to keep the records of the church is we have to approve the minutes from the prior annual meeting. So these, again, hopefully you've had a chance to read these since these were sent out before. But these are last year's minutes. And if there are, let me have a motion to approve and second. Then if there are any comments, we'll take those. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented? A motion, Chris Dolman, second. I'll say Barbara Bove's first hand I saw go up. Any comments, changes to the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And thank you to Courtney Manrod, who was our vestry secretary last year and took wonderful minutes. Betsy Ellis is our secretary this year and is taking minutes on our meeting here now. So thank you to both of you for minutes past and minutes that are forming as we speak. One item before we get into the introduction of the vestry candidates, and this is a procedural thing, flip to the very last page in your packet, which is page 33. This is in the event that we have an electronic election, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. This is a special rule. Our bylaws, and I would imagine very few churches have bylaws which allow for electronic voting. This is approval, basically a renewal of a motion we made last year that allowed for us to do electronic voting when we were totally virtual with this meeting last year. It's a temporary resolution. It did not require this to go out 60 days in advance like a permanent bylaw change, but basically you can read it for yourself, but essentially to boil it down, it allows for us, for people who are watching live, not for absentee or proxy votes, but for those who are watching live in the event of an election or anything that requires a vote, to allow for those people who are attending virtually to participate with a vote. And it is approved by the vestry. However, it does require us to consent to that here at the annual meeting. Since it comes out of the vestry, it's a motion made by them, and from the bylaws committee, it does not require a second. So I would call for a vote on that to approve this. All in favor of the temporary rule, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Yay, this makes procedural life easy when we can just fly right through it here. So, that being said, on to the next item, which is vestry candidates. But before I introduce our current candidates, it is always that sad but also thankful part where I recognize those four who this is their last year in serving on vestry. And I would just ask them to please stand. You do not have to come forward, but please stand as you are here. Nancy Anderson. There's Nancy. Barbara Bove. Judy D. Gregorio, who's downstairs helping out in Catechesis, but she was up here just a minute ago. And Lou Felton, who I know is watching from home. These four have been absolutely, now that I've had a year and a half to work with your vestry, all four of these individuals have worked incredibly hard in their ministry, particularly over this time of COVID, to, in their various ways, with their various and many gifts, to help this parish keep on doing its ministry over this time. Please recognize them. So thank you to the four of you. I also want to thank our current officers, again, Betsy Ellis, our secretary, Cameron Ellis, our treasurer, and our wardens, Judith, Delaney, and Barbara Steele. And you will, Betsy, she is here. You will not hear a report from her. You will hear from Cameron later. Barbara is watching from at home, and you will hear from Judith later, but I want to thank them for their wonderful work serving as the officers of our parish. Now, in your bulletin, I know you've got some, we are not being the most eco-friendly here, but also it's to help make sure that everybody has the proper communications. In your packet, and this was also for those of you watching at home, sent out over the e-news this week, is a front and back sheet that has the candidate biographies for Vestry. And I would like to introduce those candidates, and I would like, if they can, and I know one of them is not here, but I would ask y'all to come forward when I call your name. I will not make you give a speech, I promise, but just come forward so again you can be seen in person by the congregation. Adam Cavender, if he is here, please come forward and just stand here in front of the steps. Tom Clary. Lou Felton, who is not here. I know he is watching from at home, and I need to say about Lou, so, well, he's just rotating off. Lou was an appointee for an unexpired term. Normally, if you are elected and serve a 3-year term, you are ineligible to run for another year, but because Lou was appointed, he is eligible to run, and I'm very delighted that he has put himself forward to run again. And last but certainly not least, Beth Reed, please come forward. I am impressed by the gifts and the abilities of these 4 individuals. All 4 of them are outstanding choices for us to have to be as part of our leadership over the next 3 years. And I am really, really excited because of the people, not just these 4, but others that I am seeing who are stepping forward into various leadership and servant roles in ministry for the future of our parish. The enthusiasm and the giftedness and the love of this parish is just, there are so many people here that we can thank and honor for that, but these 4 for the courage and the willingness to put themselves forward to serve on Vestry, which certainly in some years past has not been the easiest experience here or at any parish for that matter. And I'm hoping that our next 3 years together will present us with challenges not of conflict, but rather of looking at ways in which we can continue to grow. So please give these individuals a hand. Thank you, all of you, for putting yourselves forward. And y'all may be seated. Thank you for coming forward. As required by our bylaws, I do have to ask and call for any last-minute nominations from the floor. I have joked about this, and I want to be clear. We will accept those nominations. Because of the electronic voting, it may complicate things a little bit more, but if someone has felt called by the Spirit to run for Vestry and would like to put themselves forward here at the last minute, this is the time to do that. Are there any last-minute nominations for candidates to the Vestry? As such, I call the nominations to be closed. Because now we have 4 candidates for 4 spots, our bylaws allow us to simply have an election by acclamation. It does require a motion and a second from the congregation for that. Do I hear a motion? I hear Barbara Neal. By acclamation. Jim Ball with a second. Any other comments, questions? All in favor of electing this slate of 4 as your 2022, or actually 2024 class of the Vestry, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Again, thank you to the 4 of you. You can't get out now. Oh, I'm sorry, just kidding. So, no, I'm excited for what is moving forward here. So, our Vestry members have been elected. It is time for my report. I will tell you that I will kind of jump back and forth in my written report. So if I don't follow along perfectly in the report, please forgive me. I'm not trying to mess with you, but there are things that I want to say in addition to the things that I have already written in here. Interesting lessons for today. On the one hand, I'm really glad I did not have to preach on divorce today. That is always a challenging one for us preachers. But the Job lesson is an interesting one, because Job is that figure that seemingly has everything bad happen to him all at the same time. And the entire book of Job, which is a giant poem with very small snippets of narrative mixed in, by the way, is a reflection on Job wrestling and struggling with his faith and life in general. And I'm like, what a great reflection for life here over the last 18 months for all of us, not just for us here at St. Stephen's. And it recounts to me a wonderful Southern expression that I've heard a lot of people use over the last 18 months. You ask somebody, how you doing? Fair to middling. It's been a fair to middling kind of year for a lot of folks. Keep in mind that when Southerners especially say fair to middling, they could really mean fair, that they're doing okay too. My house caught on fire, a tornado hit the remains and took my family and my dog with them. Oh, yeah, I'm fair to middling. It could be any of those extremes, and usually you have to pry a little bit to figure out, well, how middling is middling here. But it is important to note that in what I have heard from you, and certainly what we see with Job in this story, the idea of struggling and wrestling with life and our faith is a very real thing. But where Job, the power of the Job story and the power of what you as this church have done over the last 18 months is you have not disengaged. The struggle is not in just, to God, to community, to just withdrawing and pulling oneself back. It is still being engaged and wrestling, sometimes with God, sometimes with each other, sometimes with the reality that has been dealt to us. And yet this parish not only has remained engaged, but has grown in just about every conceivable metric that I can think of, objective and subjective metrics. Of course, one of the results or the manifestations of that has been Ashton, who you're probably like, where did he go? Did we run him off already today? No. Ashton, before he came on board, had told me that he had a continuing ed program at Sewanee that he was going to this week, and then he and Anna, they're being married for 4 years, had not really taken a vacation together, and it's their anniversary coming up, and I said, please take a vacation on your anniversary. So he will be back in the office with us Tuesday, and he will be preaching next Sunday. But adding Ashton to our team here at St. Stephen's is I appreciate the folks who say, well, we really need to get you some help, Bailey. And sometimes I'm like, how much help do you think I need when people say that to me? And I laugh about it. But it is wonderful to be able to have another person here who will, especially when he is ordained a priest, hopefully in February or sometime around, will be able to participate fully in sacramental life as well as fully in all the other ministries here at St. Stephen's, most of which he's already starting to jump into already. But having Ashton here also gives us the ability to say that we are here to look at ways to continue to grow our ministry here. And if you look at my report, I give you a few of the things that Ashton himself is really passionate about: Christian formation and looking at new ways in order to bring people into deeper development of their faith, working to help resurrect a young adult community here at St. Stephen's, working on our new potential third service, which is about to start the process of being planned or discerned at least. And so Ashton is here to offer those and many other skills to continue to remind us of the importance of innovating and creating and discerning what the Holy Spirit is up to in our midst. I think you may have picked up about me by now that I don't always just like to say the status quo is good, let's just keep doing what we're doing. I like doing things that are feeding people and nourishing people. I'm not about making radical changes for the sake of changes. And yet I also am a person that will say, well, such and such may not be working very well. Well, let's take a look at why that might be, and let's see if we can look at a way that might be better for our current circumstances. And my charge, and I hope my example to you, and this is one thing that Ash and I have talked a lot about, is that when we make changes of some magnitude, that it does not sprung on you just one day, oh, Bailey's wearing a giant hat in church. That's just some weird example. But there is a reason behind it, and you know the reason behind it. You have an opportunity to present feedback for whatever reason is going on in there, feedback that may change or completely alter what may be coming up as far as that particular change. But this is a huge opportunity to be reminded that as our world is rapidly changing around us, the church must work to find a balance between holding on to those traditions that are meaningful and anchor us, but also discerning the ways in which the church may continue to be in touch with the world and with the neighborhoods around us, both our immediate neighborhood, our city, our state, the wider church, which includes the diocese and churches around the world, and to be able to understand our responsibility to be the church for all people, even if they don't necessarily attend here at St. Stephen's. So that's one of the signs of growth. Priest in charge. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, let's just get this over with. Let's just make you the rector and just be done with it. And trust me, there's a part of me that says, yeah, it'd be one less thing on my plate. But when I was called to come here, two very important things were still needed to be done. Number one, there was still work of discernment for us in the congregation, work which admittedly has changed drastically because of COVID, and yet some of this, learning how we may continue to bring new people and to empower people more on the fringes to come more into full participation into the life of our church, that's one of many things that we continue to work on. And to work on is how we as your leadership can empower and equip the congregation and find the tools to use to be able to encourage that participation. And the second part of it, of course, was the fact that I've been here before. I knew you, or many of you, 12 years ago. You knew me 12 years ago. I'm not the same priest as I was 12 years ago. Not to say that that's for good or for bad, but we all change in time, as you have undoubtedly changed in time. But COVID, again, has helped us in the sense that we've had to, on the fly, in many cases, I laugh at Sherry Burchfield, our Christian Ed director, because I still think she's really going to come in one day and have a bunch of Gumby shirts, because we bend and flex and are adaptable. That's kind of been life of being the church and of being alive over the last few months anyway. But that has been one of the things that has actually helped in this process of trying for us to get to know each other once again, that we have had to learn each other in very different circumstances. God willing, the bishop consents, the creek don't rise, whatever other cliche you want to use. The vestry will have its final mutual ministry review with me in March, and sometime after that, hopefully, we will be talking about this becoming formalized with me, the rector. The only difference, by the way, is that as rector, I become tenured. In other words, it's a lot harder to get rid of me at that point. So, you can tell me now, hey, we don't want you anymore. Okay, so that would be a lot easier to get rid of me at this point. So rector does offer not just security for me, but it also signifies to the congregation and to any other person who comes into this church that this is the person we are committed to as our leader, and I am committed to continue to serve you for a long time to come. So, well, thank you for that. So that is still going to run the course. that we had planned for it when I first arrived. But it is exciting to know that we are coming closer and closer to the end of that process. I was joking with Simon earlier, and this is just in the midst of COVID and all sorts of things that have been going on around here in the church. I had a weird dream last night where every hymn he played was like a circus or big top theme. And I feel like sometimes I'm the ringmaster. And that's jokingly, but as I told somebody this morning, sometimes when things get a little interesting, I use that word a lot, interesting. It's purposely vague, not to tell you if it's good or bad, it's just interesting. And sometimes I say I approach interesting things with humor because one, it makes me feel better, and two, it's a little disarming for those things. And that's one of the things as we approach what are our goals for the upcoming year, is to approach them with continued flexibility, with a little humor, and to understand if we haven't learned our lesson yet, that things don't always go according to the way we planned them. And yet that doesn't mean we can't have a plan. It just means that we need to be flexible when that plan will undoubtedly change. Christian Ed. You have seen a lot about Christian Ed. Sherry coming on staff as our Christian Ed director and actually making that a staff position because, to be honest, there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and we have had some wonderfully talented people who have served in that lay, i.e. not compensated role of Christian Ed director, who all in various ways have said, yeah, it's probably a good thing to have a staff person on board because there's just a lot of things that have to be done. And Sherry is doing these things, and I'm so thankful for her in that regard. We have also, though, taken a different course with adult Christian Ed because before I arrived, we had a wonderful team of people who were in charge of the adult forum and also some other different studies that were going on that COVID, to more or less with contributions in varying ways, has sort of ended or changed the way in which those particular ministries have served. So we are revisioning what we are doing as part of our adult formation. And what I want you to hear today is what we are doing is going to work to find a way for all of you to find a class, a study, a group, a community for you to find connected with and to be able to deepen your faith and your walk, because this church, one of the things I've always been proud of with this church, going back to my time as a curate here before, is you are curious and very eager to learn. And that is a characteristic that is not always the case in other congregations. And so as such, I want to be able to offer you something that you want to learn and you want to grow in. And so you will hear a lot more coming up here about Christian education for adults. Care. This has been a ministry that has served a great need over COVID. And over COVID, it has become something that has adapted over time. Liz and Steve Herbies came up with this idea. And beginning sometime this week, each of you in the congregation will receive a letter from us, being Liz and Steve and I, asking you if you wish to continue to be a recipient, or if you're fairly new, you may not have been on the list, if you want to join the list of being a receiver of a care call. The purpose of those calls, especially during COVID, was to help people feel connected to the church, and particularly to give people an outlet, because obviously I cannot call everybody all the time, for that caller to be a person who, if there's something going on in your life that you want the church to know about, with your permission, they pass it on to me. But otherwise, you have a person that you can build a relationship with. We recognize going forward that care is not for everyone. Not everyone needs it, not everyone wants it, but I know there are still a number of people in our congregation who both desire it and would benefit from it. But it is a ministry that I see going forward, albeit maybe in a slightly different form as we move forward. Want to recognize our Bread Upon the Waters team that has blessed and encouraged and welcomed a number of individuals over the last year, a number of whom have already connected and plugged in with our congregation. I want to remind you, and I take this opportunity to say, welcoming and greeting of newcomers is not just a job for the Newcomers Committee. If you see someone you do not know, please speak with them. And that reminds me, name tags. Please wear your name tags. If you don't have one, call us at the office or write it on the little pad that's hanging on the name tag holder back there. Ashton and Anna certainly would love to know your name. Keep in mind that there are still people who show up here to church that I, until that moment, have never seen. And I'm looking at them like, oh, that's who you are. I've talked to you on the phone. Oh, that's who you are. And so it's helpful for me and for Sarah as well. And it's also helpful for all of you because of the fact that we have been gone and dispersed for such a length of time that it may be, well, I know who this is. I can't remember their name, in this awkward moment of, yeah, you, but I should know your name, but I don't. It's helpful for all of us to wear your name tag. So I will be reminding you regularly to please do that for the benefit of us all, so we may be able to understand and learn who each person is, and that is another way in which we can welcome one another. Let me just mention quickly, of course you now know Adam Ballantoy, our own, who is in discernment. You heard him preach and do a wonderful job last week. He is in that process. I've got another person, Beth Reed, who is working with me in the diaconal discernment right now, and I say that only because I want you to know that there are a lot of conversations taking place with people in this congregation, also on a lay level in ministry, of people who are feeling the call to go into ministry in some way. 2 individuals talking about ordained ministry, several, in fact many more, who were looking at lay ministry. I want to be very clear that those who are discerning ordained ministry are not being called to some holier and higher form of ministry. Because if you look in the catechism of our prayer book, the first order of ministry that is listed is lay ministry, then bishops, priests, and deacons after that. There are many opportunities for you to be able to find ways to become a trained and licensed lay Eucharistic minister, visitor, a catechist, who's another word for a teacher. If you want to be a lay preacher, hey, I'll take all the preachers I can get. It helps me out. To be a licensed lay pastoral care leader. Many of you are so talented in your pastoral care abilities, but the diocese provides training that helps with this. So please let me know if you are indeed interested in looking at some sort of calling to a deeper ministry here at St. Stephen's, whether that is lay or ordained. Let me say this about the third service, which is something that is just now sort of launching off the ground. There is no parameters for it at this point. We've even talked about Sunday at 5 p.m., that this would be the time. That's not even set in stone necessarily. It is, however, a way for us to look at a service which reaches people and connects people in a different way than our more formal, higher church style of liturgy does. So if you are interested in having any input on that, please let me know. Haiti, I'm going to say some more about that when we get closer. There is a new committee called Envisioning St. Stephen's, led by Ray Evans, who was also the chair of our search committee. This is a committee that I will just say is looking at ways to envision long-term projects, both needs but also development goals for our building and grounds. This is not, in other words, looking at fixing an air conditioning unit here and there. This is looking at how are we going to use our space in this building going forward. How can we continue to beautify our grounds to make them warmer and more welcoming than they already are for people in the community and for purposes of ministry for ourselves. That will be a committee you will be hearing a lot more from. Last but not least for me, one of the things that, again, as we are in our annual meeting, is to look at our financial and stewardship development. More will be said about that at the end of the meeting, but I will go ahead and tell you this. If you will hear about this from both Cameron, but especially from Dandy Gregorio, our stewardship chair. St. Stephen's financially is in a very good place right now. But we are challenged by the fact that we now have added a curate who, thank goodness for the diocesan support that we receive, which compensates roughly half of the curate's package, and adding Sherry on a part-time basis, it has challenged us to say we're going to have to take another step up in our financial development. What I do know about this parish is that it is a parish that when traditionally and historically, when St. Stephen's people have seen this is an opportunity that will help us grow, they have stepped up time after time. Our job is to communicate this to you. Here, a theme again, communication, telling you what is going on, giving you the picture to allow you to provide your input, to make your decision as to how you would respond to these things. And the story of the curate, and I meant to say this, and let me jump back for just a second. Ashton came to us truly out of divine providence. I remember going to Clearfork back in the summer and had just gotten back from going up to Claiborne County. The bishop calls, and the bishop and I have been talking, a couple of years. You know, I've got some seminarians that will be coming out. We can look at having you a curate. He calls me and says, "You want a curate in August?" I'm like, huh? What? And so he said, "I've got this young man that has gone on a little bit of an unorthodox journey through his discernment process, which I can let Ashton tell you at some point on his own. But he said he's ready to be ordained, and he's ready to start at a place September 1. Your leadership, your vestry, your finance committee, and other folks in various ministries that I have talked with, stewardship also included in that, when I presented this to them, they all kind of to varying degrees said, it's going to be a little expensive. Even the people who were a little more nervous from the fiscal end of things all looked at me and said that this would be a wonderful boost for St. Stephen's Church to have this. So all of your leadership, despite the risk, jumped at the opportunity to do this. And I say that because one of the things as your leader is I try not to make us go through things that I feel are too big of a risks, but sometimes as a leader we have to propose things that say, but this will stretch us a little bit. So one of the conversations and questions that we can have later in this meeting is about how we can move forward in being able not only to support Ashton and our increased staff load, but looking at ways in which we can continue to empower and equip our ministries to do the work they need to do. Last thing from me, at least for this report, I continue to be thankful to be your priest in charge. I continue to be thankful for your patience with me because some days I feel stretched and overwhelmed, as I'm sure all of you do, in your various and sundry responsibilities that you have. Every day when I come here, though, I find some way in which God is moving among us. I find some way in which God is comforting me. I find some way that makes me so thankful again that we, my family and I, are here with you, not only me as your priest in charge, but my family growing and serving in faith alongside of you, hopefully for many years to come. And I want you to know that you are a part of our family and that we are grateful beyond any words I can express to be here and to serve with you. So thank you very much. So, with that being said, let me move on to the next item, which is I'll call our senior warden, Judith Delaney, forward.
Good morning. The agenda says this is the time for the senior warden's report. What do I report? Father Bailey said I can say anything I want to say. So all week I've pondered, what do I want to say? First, I want to add my thanks to Nancy, Bob, Judy, and Lou for their dedicated service to St. Stephen's. And I want to welcome our new vestry representatives and know that they will continue the work for the next 3 years. There's certainly no need for me to reiterate the work of all the wonderful ministries that we have here at St. Stephen's. You have your very comprehensive annual report that covers those ministries. Please do take the time to read them because they illustrate your committed service to St. Stephen's that makes it the vibrant place that it is. The Holy Spirit surely continues to move among us. A friend suggested, tell him that Tim McGraw says to always stay humble and kind. I looked up the lyrics and found, yes, if I were preaching, they would be perfect. Here's one verse. Go to church because your mama says to. Visit Grandpa every chance that you can. It won't be wasted time. Always stay humble and kind. But of course, I'm not preaching, nor do I aspire to. This is just a report. A director of a project I once worked on used to say, I have an opportunity for you. That always meant work, but generally a good kind of work. So I say to you, as has already been said a couple of times this morning, we have an opportunity for you. Each person, you have this opportunity in your annual report, and you received a letter at home from Nancy Anderson. Just a quick bit of personal background. For all those years that I was a member of St. Stephen's and was gainfully employed for money, I came to the 11 o'clock service and went home. I gave my pledge, but I never thought I was able to give my time and talents, such as they might be, because I thought it would take too much time. Looking at this list lets me know that there are many things that need to be done around here that don't take an inordinate amount of time. So I would encourage you to take a look at the list, see if you are being nudged by the Spirit to take on any of them. I know that many of you are active in one or more of the ministries already, and I thank all you unsung heroes. There is something that didn't make the list. You will find today that when we come to the Eucharist, we're going back to bread. Are you a bread baker? Would you like to be a bread baker? Something you can do at home on your own time. Ronnie Boyd would be the person to contact. You don't have to be an Altar Guild member, but it is operated through the Altar Guild. In closing, I encourage you to contact a vestry member with any questions or concerns that you may have. And know that I'm honored to serve as senior warden in our loving and caring parish family. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. This time, call Simon Ballantoy, our organist choir director, forward.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to talk to you all today. I'm not going to regurgitate everything in my report. I'm a great believer that if you write something, that people should read it. However, there are some things that I would like to say. Particularly, I want to make some acknowledgments to people. So first of all, I'd like to thank Father Bailey and Ashton and all the staff at St. Stephen's and the Vestry. This is my 6th year here, which is seems like yesterday. And it's just a wonderful place to work. And during the week in the office, we have, Father Belly said that humor is what keeps us going. I think that's definitely true. You will note in the report that I mentioned last year in October, we had a hymnal marathon, and the proceeds from that went to Gifts and Memorials Fund. So there are a lot of new people in the parish this year, and I just wanted to mention that we do have within the Gifts and Memorials Fund a music memorial fund that you can. We welcome offerings to that fund that can enhance the music program. The money in that fund, sometimes people ask me, what does that get used for? So an example would be prior to COVID, when we had the Maryland Boys Choir come. Many of you remember when they came in February. It was right before we shut down. Things like that are expensive. So when we put on programs like that, or we have strings that might come, that is where some of that money can help offset some of those costs. So we welcome donations to that fund. And then the other thing I really want to acknowledge, a small group of people, Father Bailey and I think Judith also mentioned this thing about time and talents. And there are certainly, especially among the group here, everyone behind me offers so much of their time and talent. But there are a number of individuals over the past year during the pandemic that have really made the music program what it has been, whether that's online, in person, being a cantor outside. And these people have really offered time and talent. So I am going to ask them to stand. So I have Cheryl, and we have a little token for each of these people to give them. Ashton, Johnny Goshen, Kathy Witten, Judy Di Gregorio, she is down in Catechesis, so I will keep hers. Lisa Griggs is on vacation this week, but oftentimes Lisa is one of our choir members who sings when she is able to. She is a nurse, but when she's not working, she is here. And Karen Yearwood, who is not here. So these folks, first of all, will you stand to give them a round of applause, please? So I will close by saying that these folks came to record music, to sing outside. They came to record one Saturday when the power went out and we couldn't do anything. They came one day when we recorded a service and the memory card that we recorded it on at the end was full, so we had to do it over again. They came to record one day in the chapel when all of a sudden in the middle of our recording the lawnmower started and we had to wait 2 hours. They came another time when in the middle of Tulane Avenue one afternoon there was roadworks. But most of all, they've been so flexible and so giving of their talent. I just love everyone behind me, and I'm so thankful for them. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Simon. This time I'll call our Children Education Director, Sherry Burchfield.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very happy to report that we currently are serving 14 children in our children's ministry. We offer at St. Stephen's the nursery for the infants. We offer catechesis for our preschool in grades 1 and 2. And we're offering this year the Episcopal children's curriculum for grades 4, 5, and 6. In addition, we have our Youth Sunday School and our EYF students. Now, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd has been here a good while, and many of you are probably very familiar, but we have some new people, so just to reiterate, from the website, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is a religious experience involving children and adults in which religious values of contemplation and enjoyment of God are predominant. It's hard to breathe through this thing. The experience is shared in a place particularly prepared for the religious life of children called the atrium. The Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is the result of a collaboration between Sophia Cavalletti and Montessori-trained Gianna Gobi of Rome. This started back in 1954. Linda Tuig is our trained catechist. We are blessed to have her. At this point, she's our only catechist, but if you'd like to pursue that, I'm sure we'd love to hear about it. If you want more information, please, about catechesis, please contact or talk to Linda, or you can Google it, and there's plenty of information there. So what is the Episcopal Children's Curriculum? This is new for us at St. Stephen's. That curriculum, which I call ECC, was copyrighted in 2009 at Virginia Theological Seminary. The key descriptions for the ECC are that it is biblically based and liturgically oriented. The Children's Charter for the Episcopal Church calls for 3 responses: nurture of the child, ministry to the child, and ministry of the child. Each of the lessons in ECC addresses those issues, and they each have access to the Bible, the Book of Common Prayer, and the 1982 hymnal. Here's even more good news. The entire 3-year curriculum and all of the support material is available online. You can look at it. It's online at the virginiatheologicalseminary.com. At this time, I would like, if you want to, you can turn to the Book of Common Prayer, page 303. Just a little reminder. There you'll find the service for Holy Baptism. And there's a question. It goes like this. You've all heard it, and hopefully you've all answered it. Will you who witness these baptismal vows do all in your power to support these persons in their life in Christ?
We will.
That's right. Okay. So the question is, are you doing all in your power? And before you answer in your head and you say, oh, well, but working with children is just not my gift, please ask yourself, what is in your power? What are your passions? What are your gifts? What do you just love to do? How can you help the formation of these children into what God wants them to be? Not what I want, not what you want, but what God wants them to be. For children to discern what it is that they were born to do, they must be encouraged to experience the fullness and beauty of God's creation. So where do you see fullness and beauty of God's creation? Maybe it's in art. Maybe it's in some craft. That craft, pick your materials: ceramics, glass, fiber, paper, whichever craft, wood, metalwork. What is the craft that you just really feel passionate about? Maybe you find it in physics and engineering. Yes! Maybe you find it in the environment and the natural sciences. Mathematics. There's beauty in mathematics. Sports, camaraderie, community, history, literature, poetry, technology, and the list goes on and on and on. What do you find the beauty of God's creation and your passion? Here's my challenge to you individually. Share with me your interests and passions. Let's work together to incorporate them into our children's ministry. Trust me, if we put our heads together, we can figure out a way. And finally, how do you serve St. Stephen's? Do you serve on a committee? Do you serve individually? Let's work together to think of a way that age-appropriate children can participate with you while you serve St. Stephen's. Just some thoughts. Bread upon the waters. Even little guys can stick stickers on bags that have the St. Stephen's logo on it. Autoflowers. I mean, even preschoolers can count to 1, 2, 3. 3 flowers go in a vase, and then you can put them in the vase. Buildings and grounds. We have all ages that could work in a flower bed or a veggie garden. We have some big guys that can move rocks. And then there's parish life. What little one doesn't want to go in the kitchen and make cookies? There's okay, you think of ways, we can think of ways so that we can bridge that gap, that they can help you and you can help them. So let's work together to nurture these children, to minister to these children, and to support the ministry of these children. Thank you, and call me.
Thank you, Sherry. This time I want to say a couple of introductory words about Haiti as we do that. Cameron and Adam, if you want to go ahead and get the media set up for this. For a number of you here at St. Stephen's, you may not be aware of the fact that now going on 26 years, beginning in 1995, St. Stephen's has had a relationship with the Episcopal Church in Haiti, and particularly the village of Petit Harpon, which is in the mountains of south central Haiti. There was a group of people, some of whom are sitting in this room today, who went on that initial trip back in 1995. And over these years, St. Stephen's has worked off and on, more or less, with Church of the Good Shepherd, Lookout Mountain. But over recent years, Good Shepherd has gone and worked more on another end of the ministry in Petit Harpon, while St. Stephen's has remained committed particularly to the medical clinic that is in Petit Harpon. You may have heard there's a lot going on in Haiti, to put it mildly, between an earthquake and a presidential assassination and extreme political instability. It is a country that continues to be one that not only do we keep in our prayers as we do as part of our prayers of the people each week, but a country which we must also continue in the people that we've had this relationship with for over a quarter of a century now, to discern ways in which we can continue to engage and to help, and simply to be reminded of our shared bonds as the wider body of Christ. And the challenge, of course, right now is physically we cannot go to Haiti. Cameron, who will share here in just a second some current news, is our primary contact with our folks down there. So where we are at as a parish at St. Stephen's is, where does our current, as we talk about where is the Spirit leading us, where and how can we continue to support our ministry in Haiti? And so with that background, I turn it over to Cameron Ellis.
Well, I'm going to keep this pretty short. I've got just a few photographs that I'm going to share with you out of the many myriads that I actually have over a course of years. But I did think, and Father Bailey and I thought that it would be good for the parish to get a little bit of news about Haiti, a little bit about what our work in Haiti has been because I know that there's been a couple of things come out lately. Haiti has been mentioned in the parish, and some of you probably don't really know what's been going on. Actually, we've been involved with Haiti since the mid-1990s, when the Diocese of East Tennessee became the companion diocese to Haiti, and some of the parishes in the diocese became very involved. Ours is one of those, and I guess the first parishioners of ours to go down to Haiti at the request of the bishop, our bishop, to see what we could do to help was Eve and Mary Ellen Klotz. And this was in 1995. Since then, and I want to stress this number, probably at least 40 people from this parish, not probably, but I can come up with 40 names of people that I am sure have been on various trips there to do a number of things to help. And one way that our diocese has decided to help is in education. Our diocese has built a school in Haiti in a very remote and very mountainous area, and maintained that school since 1995. Right now, the school has about 150 students. The students are fed both a breakfast and a lunch every day, which is a pretty big deal for them. You've probably heard people in the news talk about in Haiti, a person might wake up and not know whether he or she was going to have something to eat that day or not. This is again becoming a little bit more realistic because of the difficulties that are going on in the country right now. I'm skipping around, I guess, a little bit too much, but the areas of our ministry there have been in education, in children's nutrition, in clean water, primarily in partnership with the Oak Ridge Rotaries, and led by Dr. Clary. The church that was already in existence in the community that we were sent to work in was destroyed during the 2010 earthquake. And the Diocese of East Tennessee has rebuilt that for them. And the picture's on the back side of this handout. There were quite a few trips going down there for that. And there was quite a few St. Stephen's people involved in that. And it was decided then that this would be the building, the location for being able to provide some medical care in that community, which has been a dream of Dr. Clary and I since about 2008. This medical care facility, we've been calling it a clinic. It's kind of like a walk-in clinic, except that it's only open one day a week. And it's located in the church. The church nave is used as the waiting room. And we began operations in 2015. And we've been maintaining operations ever since then. About half of what we put in each month goes to medications, and the other half goes to help support one nurse and one doctor. I don't want to try to go into all the details at this time because there's just so much that has gone on down there from St. Stephen's and from East Tennessee in general. Our biggest partners, I guess, in the diocese have been Good Shepherd on Lookout Mountain. But, you know, feel free to ask me lots of questions. And I think that it's important for me to try to share with you that this has not been just a short-lived idea or a one-time mission trip to be supportive of youth, for example. This has been a long-standing calling that many of us at St. Stephen's have been feeling, and in the diocese in general. It's looked like, well, let me just read something that I wrote a couple of years ago as to why we're doing this. We're doing this to support the raising of a generation of Haitians with adequate nutrition, health, and education who could come to self-govern themselves and build a self-sufficient economy. In 2019, I thought that we were really seeing the signs of success in that, of the beginnings of success in that. Unfortunately, since then, the government has once again fallen apart and reverted back to more autocratic and less democratic conditions are governing. Hopefully, this will be a short-term situation and order can be restored, and we will again be able to continue with the work that we have to do. What is the work we have to do? Well, we want to do more support of the clinic as it is right now. The clinic's pretty bare bones. And we have materials and equipment that we've had in storage for some time that we want to get down there and be able to enhance the operations of, I didn't go through these pictures, of the clinic. But we're afraid to do that because of the turmoil that's going on right now. In fact, our friends in Chattanooga have sent down a container very recently, just about 2 years ago, using another organization, and the container got lost. And the person that was in charge of that organization died of COVID. And we don't have very good way of being able to find it again. So that was going to be an addition to the school building, as well as somebody was putting together a kind of a chicken raising facility in a box. But anyway, we were going to use that container, but we didn't. And we're glad we didn't. The funding, of course, is an ongoing challenge. But at the beginning of this year, one of our generous families offered $10,000 in support of the clinic if we were able to develop or to find matching funds, because they don't want to always be in it by themselves. Well, we've gotten matching funds up to, at this point, around $1,600. So this is going to run out at the end of the year. Whatever, this offer is going to run out at the end of the year. So if we can come up with another $1,675 between now and Christmas, we'll be able to make use of their full offer. Haiti is a beautiful country. The people who are there are beautiful people. They are not lazy. If you'll look at the bottom photograph in this handout sheet, you'll see these hillsides with these furrows. All of this is done by hand. They don't have mechanized equipment in our community. They've got donkeys and they've got their backs, and they're able to sustain their life with that, except for medical care. One of the things that really, I guess, spurred Dr. Clary and I on in this was that we had a acquaintance there in Haiti named Luke that we worked with just about every time we went down there. Always generous with his time and his strength. Luke got injured. And because he was not able to afford any kind of medical care, this was before the clinic actually opened, he became stricken with sepsis and died. So I guess what I'm saying is that without our clinic, people can die of entirely preventable things, maybe even tonsillitis, I don't know. So I guess this is about all I can feel like I can give to you right now in the way of a view of what's been going on down there and what we've been doing. So I'll go on to the next one.
Cameron, thank you. And thank you. Thank you for all your work in keeping our contacts and communication going. You've heard Cameron say the financial challenges right now of supporting, not just in terms of raising the money, but money we can usually get down securely, but any goods right now, or it's a crapshoot. Where we are going with this is I want you to know there will be much more to be said about Haiti coming forward. When we are able to gather together in person to have programs specifically to raise money for Haiti, we will be doing that and doing more education about the work that is going on down there. The main thing is to pray, to ask questions, and to know that this is still a vital part of our outreach ministry here at Haiti. And again, thank you to Cameron, for all of you, again, for Klotz's, Leah Bailey, people that I'm sure other folks that I may not know who have been down to Haiti at some point during our 25-plus year relationship with them. Thank you for your faithful ministry and engaging us in this relationship. Cameron, call you back up for just a quick little overview of the finance report.
talking about the finances, I guess, and sometimes in previous years I've just said, well, we're in the black. So I'm going to say that this time as well. And I would like to refer you to the your packet and look at the finance report in your packet. It's on page 22. I'm going to use as a place to speak from. I was hoping to have that up here, but I guess I better just move on. This is the balance sheet. It's kind of the summary, our financial summary of the entire parish. And you'll see at the very top of the page, general fund checking. That's just as it says. This is our checking account that we operate the church out of. It is where your pledges go. This is for the annual expenses and receipts of the parish. There are other checking accounts. There is the discretionary account, which is also called the rector's discretionary account, usually, but right now I guess we're calling it the priest's discretionary account, that receives donations earmarked for it. And previously we had another a special discretionary account that was the remains of a legacy donation from one particular now deceased parishioner that Father Bailey has decided to use that this year for the support of our Christian education director. It's not on this sheet anymore because that money's been moved into the general budget. The Memorial Garden checking, it may look small, but don't worry. If you look down the page a little bit, the Memorial Garden has a large savings account. So it is well taken care of so far as the people that are working in it and so far as the funding is concerned. Now we have what we call the temporarily restricted accounts. This is where all of the donations which are earmarked by the donor go. And this is a collection of all those donations. It's multi-year. Money can sit in there for a number of years. An example would be the Gifts and Memorials account. When someone provides a memorial gift to someone who has died or someone that they want to honor, it would be put in the Gifts and Memorials account. Another one that's a good example is the Haiti Clinic account. It's where we collect money for Haiti and where we send money out of. The Altar Flowers Fund is in that. And by the way, if we have any we have trouble with the Altar Flowers Fund. So I'd like to also draw your attention a little bit to the next section, which is called Investments. This is basically our parish savings. And we have those invested with two different investment houses. One of them is called the Episcopal Endowment Corporation, which is managed by SunTrust. And the other one is just our parish only. The Episcopal Endowment Corporation has is a tremendous body of money from all over the country. But the trust company, our funds with them is operated out of Knoxville. And we have two different kinds. We have endowment type funds that we maintain the principle of, and then restrict ourselves to using only the income from those. And this is the endowment fund, something called the Heritage Fund, and then the Memorial Garden Endowment. So on these, like I said, we restrict ourselves to using only the income out of these funds. The Heritage Fund is to be spent on mission opportunities, and the Endowment Fund is to be spent however the vestry feels the need to. I think that's about all I can really have to say about the finances right now. Like I said, the finances are good right now. We are very fortunate that in that regard, we're very fortunate we have a good foundation of padding of investments. During the COVID year or year and a half, I noticed that almost all of our income was directly to the general fund, was pledge income. Now, earmarked donations for specific purposes and where people's hearts are starting to come back.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you all if y'all could move the media there. And then, last but certainly not least on our itinerary, I call our stewardship chair, Dan Gregorio, to come forward.
Stewardship chair, another term for that is lightning rod. I'm going to drop this thing down so my glasses don't fog up too much. But on behalf of a very hard-working stewardship team, of which there are about 13 of us, this year, 2021, has certainly been interesting, as we've all heard. And since March of 2020, it's even been more of a challenge. However, our clergy, staff, and parishioners have met this challenge with tireless commitment to mission and, as you've just heard, generous financial giving. The only thing that we've really missed is the face-to-face interactions, which are, of course, very, very important. But they are now starting to pick up, even though what the faces actually look like under the masks still remains a mystery in some cases. As you now have been told many times, Father Bailey has added 2 staff members, a Christian education director, who has just spoken, and a curate. The curate was certainly at the encouragement of our bishop, and both of these 2 additions are really great additions, and we want to encourage their continuation. The bishop's office will pay 50% of the curate, which means we pay for the other 50%, and this is over a 2-year commitment. And we also have other commitments. And as you know now, these commitments can only be paid for with money, alas, which is part of the purpose of the Stewardship Committee. There's no doubt that St. Stephen's parishioners will continue to support the parish with their monetary pledges, but also with their time and talents by being involved in many of the many volunteer activities that exist. The pledge data are needed because 95% of the budget that will be crafted by the vestry is based on pledge data. And then the time and talents, volunteer commitments, are how the parish actually does its mission-related activities. Next week, Brent Sigmund will talk to you a little bit more about the financial situation. And the following week, Rob Steele and/or Jim Rousey will explain why actually more pledgers are needed. Okay, more pledgers. That means more people pledging. It does not mean tithing. We do not have anything in our vocabulary that says tithing. Okay, even though tithing is certainly acceptable. We won't turn them away. You have received mailings and Evangeline news and e-news articles, and more will be forthcoming, and including more recently a very comprehensive list of many of the volunteer opportunities. I don't know what color this sheet is. Okay, I thought it was yellow. Nancy Anderson said, no, it's green. Okay, so it's yellow-green, or maybe chartreuse. This is the sheet. Please look at the sheet and study it and check one or more. Now, the question is, how much should a person really give? You know, give as you are able, of course. Recently, Jim Ball reminded me of what one of our former rectors said: don't give until it hurts. Give until it feels good. That's really not a bad guide, actually. Even though we have received many pledge cards already, today is the official beginning of the stewardship campaign. The ingathering is All Saints' Day, November 7. Details about that day are still to be announced. But that doesn't mean that will be the end of the pledge receipts. You know, we'll continue to accept as long as they keep coming in. What is necessary is that the vestry have reliable data so that it can craft its budget for the 2022 year. All of this involves faith. We have stepped forward in faith, especially with the addition of the 2 new staff members, of which are really, really good hires. We encourage all parishioners to do the same. Thank you very much for your commitment to St. Stephen's, and if you have questions about this, see me after this and we'll chat. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. I recognize that this has been a long meeting, and I do want to offer an opportunity if anyone has any questions that they would like to bring to the floor. If you do, raise your hand, and I will recognize you. I have not received any from our hotline downstairs, so those of you watching online, this is your chance. Call in a question if you have one. As I wait just a second to make sure there are none, I hope you've heard the theme among many good things happening is there are opportunities to serve, and there are lots of current and new ministries bubbling up here at St. Stephen's. And these ministries only work with faithful, committed people, of which there are numerous of those here in this room and throughout our parish watching online here today. Find your place. Discern where God is calling you, because all of you, not only have a place at this church, but also have gifts to contribute in some way. So, no questions on the hotline, other than Elizabeth telling me they're bored downstairs. My mom is showing her baby pictures of me. Oh. So with that being said, Sherry, who is standing right here, go ahead and fish the kiddos, and I will invite each of you to turn to your service leaflet, or on page 358, as I now adjourn our annual meeting. Thank you again, and let us affirm our faith with the words of the Nicene Creed.